This video is brought to you by BetUS Sportsbook and Casino.
What if I told you one division of teams is so boring and lacking talent that even the discussion of who will earn the home playoff game doesn't matter because honestly they'll probably just lose it anyways? I am of course talking about the NFC East. Now before all of you guys jump in the comments section and tell me about how there hasn't been a repeat winner in this division since 2010, thank you for the comment. That's a really cool sabermetric or stat that you told me right now. But honestly, it just doesn't matter. Like, this division just stinks in my opinion. Like, I mean, the East is home to choking factories with massive roster issues and pathetic franchises in the middle of deep rebuilds that they aren't nearly equipped enough to handle. Every team in this division is either broken or boring to the point that it's almost smart to pick against them every single week. So in today's video, let's look at the East from the top to the bottom, from the almost obvious champions to be to the #1 overall pick as contenders possibly. This is why the NFC stinks. Now, the first team we're going to start off with is the Eagles, and honestly, they're the only team that we're going to be talking about today that could be actually considered actual contenders. Biggest holes this offseason. With the additions of Saquon and the succession plan of Cam Jurgens taking over for the legendary Jason Kelce, the running game should look the same or even better with Saquon in the backfield. And now with the addition of Dotson thanks to a recent trade, Jalen Hurts will have enough weapons that his fans won't be able to complain about nobody coming to support him. And like, I mean, honestly, fundamentally, their whole offseason was trying to break their broken defense that honestly was just in shambles last year. And honestly, I see all the moves they did make this season, and it kind of just makes me shrug my shoulders and say, why can't this happen again? Like, we've already seen them repeat it once. What happens if they do it again this season? I mean, first off, they might be the most likely team in football to lose a key player to injury. Last season, every starting player not named Jalen Hurts, DeAndre Swift, or Lane Johnson missed at least one game due to injury, and with Swift gone, Hurts perpetually banged up, and Johnson one of the oldest elite linemen in the game, I honestly have no reason to have faith in their ability to stay healthy enough to even make a deep run. More importantly than that though, how do we know they actually even got better? I mean, investments on the defense are good on paper, but new defensive coordinator Vic Fangio hasn't found a lot of recent success. And a lot of their projected starters like James Bradberry and Darius Slay are coming off of very down years. I mean, honestly, the coaching staff as a whole seems to be on the hot seat, and since there have been reports this season that Nick Sirianni and Jalen Hurts aren't getting along despite their relative success together. I mean, Sirianni wasn't great at making changes when his team was struggling, so if Philly doesn't get hot like in early 2022, there could be trouble for him and the Eagles. I mean, honestly, the Eagles in the NFC, I think of just because of how open it is, they are in the upper echelon of the NFC, but in the whole entire NFL, I don't think they're like in that S tier if you want to rank them there. They're more in like the tier right below that, in like A. And honestly, I don't know if they're going to be able to make a run to the Super Bowl again. And I mean, honestly, with how easy this division is too, I just don't see how like that horrifying playoff loss from last year doesn't come back to haunt them still. I mean, they have enough talent and endurance to be good or even a great regular season team, but their style of play won't hold up anymore since so many teams have good film on how to stop them. And also with all the reports that Jalen, honestly, I can see their ceiling being 11 or 12 wins and their floor about 9 or 8. But if they manage to fumble this layup of a season away, heads will roll, and I believe that Nick Sirianni may be one of the first coaches to get fired. Which brings us now to America's team, and we all know that the Cowboys are going to suck this year, but in a very special way, by going probably 13 wins or even 12 wins and then losing in the playoffs just like they always do. But now with that aside, honestly, between this offseason, there has not been one conversation from this offseason that has revolved around them getting better after the humiliating end to last season. As we look back on last year, the Cowboys did end up winning the East last season thanks to the collapse of the Eagles in their defense. And I mean, to be fair, they looked extremely solid down the stretch. A lot of smart people saw them making a real run at their first Lombardi in multiple decades. Unfortunately for the Cowboys, they became the first team in NFL history to lose a playoff game to a 7 seed and did so to the youngest playoff team in history while at home. Like, I mean, honestly, the Packers just shattered every Cowboys dream when they beat them in the playoffs last year. And since then, they really haven't done a single thing to get better. They've just been in the news for the wrong headlines for not paying their players the proper amount to get them back on the field, like CeeDee Lamb, Micah Parsons, and I'm sure Dak, who I think they will let walk. Like, starting with Dak and CeeDee, they are the team's only 2 real offensive stars and are holding out for new contracts eventually, and Micah Parsons clearly wants one too. On top of that too, the team leading rusher Tony Pollard for some reason was allowed to hit free agency and walk, which would all be good and fine until you saw that they replaced him with the corpse of Ezekiel Elliott to be his replacement. Like, that made no sense. We all saw the training camp video of Ezekiel Elliott running through the drill and coming out on the other side just beat. Like, that dude is done. Stop trying to make him a running back. He's done. Also on top of this too, left tackle Tyron Smith tested the market and signed elsewhere, only to be replaced with rookie Tyler Guyton from Oklahoma, who might be good, but who is also already dealing with injury concerns. Their center also walked, leaving another gaping question mark on the line, which already isn't amazing. That's also a huge loss to lose Tyron Smith, who was one of the best left tackles in the league. But then on top of that too, they let their center walk. I mean, like, honestly, there are just so many gaping holes in this offensive line. I don't know what they're going to do, but that's okay, because I'm sure if they didn't spend a lot of money to keep that offensive unit together and really try to bolster that offense that was really good last year, I'm sure they ended up spending a lot of money on the defensive unit, right? Yeah, keep dreaming, my friend. I mean, Dallas did at least manage to sign a bunch of veteran defenders to one-year mercenary deals, but when you look at the list of guys signed, I challenge you to tell me who among them isn't either washed or pretty close to it. Oh, and worst of all, the Cowboys somehow still have Mike McCarthy running the offense and calling plays for them. Like, I would imagine that this dude is just bound to get fired this year. Like, there is no way he does not get fired this year if they win less than 10 games. Like, he's gone. I mean, on top of that too, they've lost Dan Quinn on the defensive side, who may be their only good coach. And I mean, even if McCarthy was decent, his best weapon just got a pay raise and is probably still pretty pissed off. Like, I mean, honestly, the Cowboys are just fundamentally broken. So even if they get their money figured out, getting to 9 wins will be enough of a challenge. Their ceiling is another 10-win year if contracts get solved and everyone plays at a high level, but Dallas's floor is like something of like 7-10, which is crazy to say, but I'm not going to hold my breath for the Cowboys, and I see them narrowly missing the playoffs and finally making some real changes at the coaching spot and at the quarterback spot too, but not before they get humiliated and raked across the coals for one more season. Are you looking for a new book this football season? BetUS is the answer. They have the fastest and easiest payouts in the industry, along with 24/7 personalized service 365 days a year. Not only that, but they have live wagering on all major games, so if you see something mid-game and want to make a wager on it, you can. And the best part is you get 10% back on your net losses twice a year. And now look, you guys know I had to come through for you, so use my sign up link in the description or pinned comment and get a sign up bonus of 125% up to $2,000. Again, thank you to BetUS for sponsoring today's video, but for now, let's hop back into it. And now I think one team that really everybody is excited to watch this year is the Commanders. The Commanders might be the only team in the East with hope, and they're probably still going to suck. Now, let me start by saying this. I honestly do like the Commanders. For as much hate as I've given Jaden Daniels, I'm still excited to go see the kid play and see if he does pan out, or like I've predicted, turn out to be a bust. Like, I mean, up until the Dotson move, they made some great moves to try and get their team better. That being said though, there still are some glaring holes and just problems on this roster that they still need to address, and I think that's what's going to move them to being like a middle pack NFC team. To start, the most important position, Jaden Daniels has the talent to be the best quarterback in the division. I mean, Dak is mid, Jalen Hurts is injury prone, and Daniel Jones looks like one of the worst, most overpaid players in history, and might go down as one of the biggest just blunders in history. With Daniels, Daniels was named the week 1 starter before week 3 of the preseason, and it was pretty clear that he'd get the nod early on. I mean, his arm has looked solid, and he has Lamar Jackson level speed. If he can avoid injury, he'll be lethal on the field. His weapons are solid too, led by Terry McLaurin, but Washington just traded Jahan Dotson to the Eagles for some reason, so they're back on the market for a second option. Similarly, they balled out in the draft, stealing Jerzon Newton in the 2nd round. I mean, bolstering this defense is going to be a huge task that they want to handle too, especially when you've got a defensive-minded head coach like Dan Quinn, but they're still a few moves away from that. Sadly, Montez Sweat and Chase Young are both gone, and this secondary is still very young. To the Commanders' credit though, they've spent real money on the offensive line this offseason. Do I have the Commanders coming in 3rd place then in the NFC West is what you're probably asking yourself. And to answer that question straight up is they're just a really young roster, and honestly, their coaches might suck, but who knows? I mean, Dan Quinn's last head coaching stint ended half a decade ago because he couldn't keep up with the developing offensive game for football. football. He's now charged with developing a team of young players built for that modern offensive game. And honestly, it leaves me with more than a few questions to see if he can develop still. Add those questions to a roster that is basically Terry McLaurin and a bunch of young guys, and chemistry becomes a very real question. I mean, in reality, the Commanders actually, I think, have a ceiling of 9 wins. They can get there, but unfortunately, I think more realistically, they're going to hit their floor of being like 5-12 simply because their head coach might suck, and they're just too young and newly assembled to overcome that if it happens. The one variable is if they end up back in the Brandon Ayuk sweepstakes, if he's even still on the trade market with their cap space and extra draft picks from the Dotson trade. But I mean, regardless, there is a change coming in Washington, and even if they suck this year, I don't think it's going to last very long. And finally, the NFC East nominee for the 2024's worst team in football, the New York Giants. And I mean, we can't cover the New York Giants without covering the elephant in the room, Daniel Jones, and how bad he is. Daniel Jones is entering the second year of his massive $160 million extension, which the Giants gave him during a holdout. Since then, he's thrown for 900 yards, 2 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, and missed 11 games with various injuries. Oh, and just a week ago, he literally looked like a garbage can during the Texans preseason game when they played them. Like, horrible. I mean, Jones honestly has looked atrocious ever since the 2022 playoffs, which he only got to because of head coach Brian Daboll forced him to make fewer mistakes through his play calling and utilization of Saquon. And that probably isn't going to work anymore though, because Saquon is now an Eagle and Daboll is forced to treat Jones like a real quarterback because of how expensive he is. And now luckily they did go out and get some weapons in the draft via Malik Neighbors, who personally for me, I think that dude is going to be a stud. It's just if they can get him the ball with an incompetent quarterback is the real question now. I mean, as much as it hurts me to say this, I don't really think he will be doing much of anything with the Duke Dud throwing him the ball. And worst of all, the Giants offensive line is probably still one of the worst in the league. Like, I mean, even if Daniel Jones were to be serviceable this year, he's probably going to get sacked around 50 times. It was 30 in 6 games last year, so I'm being pretty nice with that guess. And on the defensive side of the ball, I honestly don't even know what the game plan is. Like, I mean, Brian Burns was a good addition, especially next to Dexter Lawrence, but they can't make up for a back 7 that leaves a lot to be desired. Daboll is one of the better coaches at maximizing his roster, but he's going to be asked to make chicken salad out of, well, you get it, yeah. And I think the most tragic part about this whole thing is I think if they do play terrible, which I fully expect them to, Daboll's going to get the short end of the stick and he's going to get fired for something that he shouldn't get fired for, I think. Like, honestly, it's all because of the GM's fault, because he decided to believe in Daniel Jones' agent that 4 years, $160 million was a bargain, which it's terrible now. I mean, honestly, the Giants ceiling, I give them like 7 wins, the same as what they escaped with last year thanks to the magic of Tommy DeVito, but their floor is probably something like 4 wins, maybe 5. That's what I'm going to go with. I mean, they honestly have the potential to become one of the worst performing teams in NFL history. And if they do pull it off, the Daniel Jones contract might honestly end up being remembered as one of the most overpaid contracts, similar to Russell Wilson's Denver deal. But there you have it. That is why I personally think the NFC East is just terrible this year. I mean, honestly, whoever makes the playoffs from this division, I fully expect them to get bounced in the first round. As you saw, I think it's going to be the Eagles, but a lot of question marks. Who knows? Maybe Jaden Daniels could take that step in his first year and be like CJ Stroud. I think that's what we're kind of like all saying about the rookie quarterbacks that are playing this year. But give me your guys' predictions down below. Give me who you think is going to win the division in each team's record. And as always, if you guys did enjoy the content, make sure you guys like, comment, and subscribe. And as always, I will catch you guys in the next one.